Okay, this is a video for homeschool resources as well as education. This also is for economic studies, economic applications, and overall public education for fixing the economy. This particular video is uh, signs of political problems and corruption in a country. So this video isn't going to state detailed information. It's to give you an idea of things to look for in a general sense. It's not a finger pointing video. But if you think about the content in this, you'll be able to watch for and look for certain things. And you'll be able to, spot those. Okay, so first sign of a country has political corruption, um, or that the political problems are really bad, is that there is no voice in the political parties that are running for office. Now, what I mean by that, I don't mean that they don't have a message, and I don't mean that they don't have a voice. I mean that the individual people in the political parties, when they try and go in there to go into office, the party tells them what their message is instead of them coming up with their own unique messages. Okay? So, in a healthy society, you should be able to have an idea for an invention or a new concept, and you should be able to come forward and say, hey, I've got this really good idea, this is what it is, and people should be able to listen to it or reject it, depending on, okay? If you think about the past couple elections, there's, with very, very few exceptions, and only one really good exception in our modern time period, people haven't come forward with a new message or new ideas when they run for office. The exception being Trump. But before Trump, we hadn't heard that from either party in quite a while. Particularly, one of those parties is a little bit worse than others. I'm not trying to finger point in this video though, so we're not going to talk about specifics, but think about it. When was the last time you saw anyone running for office saying, I've got ideas how to fix things, and here's what we could do? The only one who's done that recently has been Trump. It's probably been decades since people have, been willing to do that. Okay, that's a symptom. Okay, look for it. Can someone come up with a new idea and bring it to the party and have them actually listen? They're not listening. Okay, that's one of the symptoms, is that they're not willing to listen to both their own people and they're not willing to listen to the public in general. Nothing gets fixed. Okay, here's another one. Number two, um, when somebody's leaving office, that is an elected official like the president or a governor, by law, what's supposed to happen is that political appointees, their term ends. Okay, so if you were let's say the previous president selected you as a political appointee for a cabinet position or some other position, when he leaves office, they're supposed to leave office with him. Okay, what happened is, before Trump's first term, the person who left office then, he, right before leaving, the last couple of months, he moved political appointees into civil appointee positions so that they couldn't be removed and so that they could stay in there and run interference. You're not supposed to be able to do that. Nobody really called him out on that. That is part of why there was so much fighting for the first year and when Trump ran for office, when he was in his first term. People are going to, hopefully they'll watch for this with Joe Biden leaving office. People could look and watch to see if some of his political appointees get moved in and stay in office. Okay, it's a big no-no. You're not supposed to be able to do this. Anyway, that could happen on a state level also, in theory, and it could happen in other areas of the government also. Okay, number 3, the courts and the judges and the legal system isn't able to really benefit the poor and the middle classes. Only the rich elite are gaining from it. Courts are there for a reason. Courts aren't, in an idealistic society or in a society that's healthy, courts should be able to benefit people. They should have some positive merit. In recent decades, nobody can really think of much good happening in the courts. And they're starting to realize how much even the good cases have had cheating involved. Enough said there. Number 4, when a country is troubled, when there's a lot of problems, you will find a surge in crime and lawlessness increase. This is particularly in the metros, but it can happen in, the country in general. Part of this is because as people are unable to feed themselves, it's natural that, if you've got kids, they're going to go out at night and forage. Okay, forage doesn't necessarily mean that what you forage isn't owned. So we've seen this where crime and lawlessness have been increasing in these troubled areas from the economic downturns. I could do a whole video on this. In fact, I'm going to come back to this because there's a lot of really good key points that both historically and currently that have a lot of cross-referencing that you could really go into detail about. Now, when you look for the signs and signals of crime and lawlessness in the cities increasing, you might not see it on paper. And there's 2 reasons for that. First, they made law changes to hide crime. And they did that by saying we only have to report crime numbers or say that this is a crime if the damage was over, say, $1,000. New York is being destroyed by this particular law where we're not going to come and prosecute shoplifting that is under $1,000. Okay, California and other places we're doing this also. Okay, and that hides the crime numbers. The other thing, the second one, and this is also pretty dangerous and totally shameless also, is that many crime metros announced in publicly and in writing, you can find news articles that talk about this, that they could reject 911 calls in these crime zones. That doesn't make any sense. Now, when you see the articles talking about stuff like that, you realize that is really crazy. Okay, the next one is social engineering. Social engineering is kind of the idea that you are looking for a way of transitioning society to what you perceive as some kind of utopia or what you want your dream to be or whatever. And on paper, it sounds like it's a neat idea in theory, but the problem is what happens is to build that, you start picking candidates for government and business based on politics and social pressure and point of views instead of based on merit. So people who are actually doing the work are being passed by for people who are yes men, or people who just know how to say the right thing. A lot of people get left in the dust by this. A lot of really good people. That's why it's serious. It's a serious problem. Social engineering is occurring, and you can see that in the universities and colleges. Um, that brings me to my next point. Um, Signs of political trouble are that the colleges and universities and the educational systems aren't really working on merit. They're kind of cherry picking who has the same ideology and belief systems that they do instead of who's actually doing the homework and knows the material and is passing the test. People have shown that that's dangerous. People have also shown that it's happening in a lot of these woke universities. Um, you're not going to get good workers produced out of educational systems that are bypassing merit and effort to promote ideology instead. And sometimes that means woke, weaponized ideology. Ideology shouldn't be, it shouldn't matter what religion or ideology you have when you are taking like a college class. They shouldn't even be able to screen for that kind of stuff. The fact that they could even screen for it is pretty serious and damning as something you shouldn't do. The next bullet point on signs of political corruption are that the checks and balances in government have been disabled. Okay, now ask yourself, have they been disabled? Yes, they have. We saw that in the first term of Trump being in office. And even during Joe Biden's presidential term, we were seeing that you couldn't remove these people that were running amok. Um, not not going to talk about names here, but okay, you should be able to remove someone if they're corrupt through impeachment. The justice system, Department of um, the legal system should be able to hold in check, crime and people doing wrong, especially white collar crime and political white collar crime, if you want to call it that, need to be curbed much and need to be much higher priority if you're going to keep the country healthy, because everything kind of runs downhill from there. Okay, the next bullet point is that you start to see in troubled countries that the treasures and national resources get stolen or sold off. This has been happening. There's a number of examples. First, people had found out that a lot of national parks in the country and land resources were being sold under the table and often without anyone knowing it to foreign powers. A certain country in the East, okay, that's in East Asia, owns a lot of national parks in the U.S. That's unbelievable that that could even happen. The other thing that had happened, and this is really damning, the U.S. used to have a national grain reserve, which was going to be used for emergencies if there was no food. A lot of people don't even know that we had a national grain reserve. That has been embezzled and sold off by corrupt officials and corrupt presidents in the past. It didn't happen in only one presidential term. It happened over a period of time, and that's ridiculous to have such a valuable. That's such a valuable protection to have some kind of national grain reserve. People know we have a national oil reserve. They don't realize that we had other emergency reserves for other critical infrastructure also. In recent years, you have probably seen articles talking about the national emergency oil reserve being sold off. Um, and that's a shame. That is one of the problems that show that this is happening. Also, past presidential terms from a variety of people, not just one person, had taken money from Social Security. That's why Social Security is in jeopardy. It's not going to fail this year unless they keep stealing from it. but it was originally set up that Social Security would basically last forever. And then some of you will probably have seen articles where someone said that Social Security will only last until whatever such year, and they for a while they were quoting like in the 2030s. I haven't checked it recently, but it's every time they steal from it, it goes down. And there's one of my videos goes into a fix of how you could fix that. And the sad part is, if you have a really good idea or if you want to do some good in this country, you will probably be ignored and passed by. So I doubt anyone's can even read or see that video. Anyway, another component of looking for signs of political problems in a country are the shrinking land ownership or no land ownership overall. If you look at the socialist countries of Europe, many people miss the idea completely that you are not allowed to own land in many of these countries. So places like Germany or places in Scandinavia and other places, you could own the house, but not the land that it's on. That doesn't make any sense. That means it's basically a lie, because if you don't own the land you're on, you have no control over anything. And you can also be taxed and rented to death. Also, land ownership is one of the few ways that you can have control over your life. If you get it paid for and you can avoid rents. The other problem is that in this country, corporations have so much power that they are able to keep individual people and families pushed out of a lot of economic opportunities, such as land and other things. And that's kind of a side issue. We want jobs in corporations, but they need to be set in clear ways that they don't compete with and damage families and vice versa. Okay, next bullet point. When a country is on the top, what usually happens is foreign competitors and countries that experience rivalries with that country, they don't attack it directly. They use what is called asymmetrical warfare. Asymmetrical warfare means that you would try and attack or sabotage in a way that doesn't get caught, that people don't understand it, and that is less visible. They might not understand where it came from or even that it was an attack. That's what asymmetrical warfare is. It's attacking in a way that they can't attack you back. Okay, that's what we've been seeing for quite some time, and people don't really talk about asymmetrical warfare against the country. But that is why you had so many farm arsons and some other things that have been happening over the last probably 5 or 6 years. And when people were describing rivals of the US, some of the smart people, when you listen to them talk about those countries and their relationship with the US, they use the term asymmetrical warfare. That is a reference that you can use to cross-check this with. Okay, the next bullet point is propaganda and news blackouts. Okay, well, the countries in Europe and the countries that are not free, or that don't have freedoms or have intensely curbed freedoms, the news is state-owned or state-controlled. Like for right now, Canada has no news outlets that are not somehow state-funded or state-controlled. The Rebel News or whatever for a while was trying to do something like that. I don't know if they still are, but all the other news in Canada was state controlled. And part of that it starts by, in the door, they offer funding and want to help, a news company. But by taking that money, you now have to do what they say, and then it just evolves further. Now, if you also look at the countries in Europe and Asia, most of the news in those countries is um, it's state controlled and state owned in one way or another. It could be hidden in how it's done also. It's not always visible. So the common people don't actually have a voice. You won't actually see people state their views. For example, Germany has a law that you are not allowed to talk about certain groups that ran their country during World War II. Okay? That's a news blackout, and that's propaganda. Now, what happened in the US was that before 2012, when the when TV bundled all the channels into cable and internet, before that occurred, the big companies, the mega corporations, had bought out all of the news media and the media companies in the US. And they did that to have only their voice be presented. And as a result, it ended up as a news blackout, because you hear news, but you don't actually hear the real issues that are going on or what the real worries of individual families and people are. If you ask people what they're worried about now, they'll tell you they're worried about the economy and their jobs and their ability to help their family. You don't see those kind of news articles, or if you do, it's only the kind of view that they want to present. And you can actually look up who owns these companies that own these news companies. Like, for example, when Tucker Carlson was forced out of Fox News, there was a certain guy's name that kept coming up, and that guy's name owned Fox News, or owned a significant amount of its stock. Okay? That basically shows that the rich elite own and control the news. When they do that, you don't hear what's going on. You don't know what the real stakes are. You don't know what the stressors are. And usually in the past, people called those people ROBBERBARONS. You can't state these people's names very well without being censored. So you have to be careful how you say it. But this has come up in some of my other material, that it's this specific rich elite group of people that have been causing a lot of these problems somehow. And the news blackouts are especially part of that. And this particular one is really dangerous. If you have a news blackout, or propaganda news only, you can totally change a country in a very small amount of time, because you can now influence and change all of the elections and who is elected. You've removed the voice of the common people. They don't even know and hear about what the real issues are. And you also end up changing the laws. You can rewrite it any way you want by having these propaganda news and news blackouts. That is one of the most dangerous problems that we have right now, because your freedoms are getting eroded. Now, a historical example of this: during World War II, people would listen to the radio, and they'd listen to what was being said about the battles between Germany and Britain. So if you were on the British side listening to the BBC radio, they would hear that there'd been some kind of plane skirmish with the German planes and theirs, and they'd hear that their Spitfires shot down, X amount of German planes, and it was usually, their version was that the Spitfire shot down more than the German plane shot down. And that was actually usually true. But if you were on the German side, the German radio would hear that none of their planes got shot down and that all the British Spitfires were sunk, just like that. And none of that was true. See, that's the danger of propaganda. Um, you aren't going to have course corrections of problems in society if you're only hearing propaganda also. This is also why I thought that some of these videos and these concepts and ideas would be good for homeschool resources. Someone could listen to this kind of stuff for, if they were trying to help their kids with homeschool and education. And you're not going to hear this kind of stuff in the schools because too many of the really good teachers, they've retired or it's become too stressful. There's too many kids, and a lot of the kids aren't able to. A lot of people have been passed up the grades in school without actually having met the prerequisites for that class, and it causes the class to be able to go slower. They can't get through the material because not everyone can stay kept caught up with it, and the material gets watered down. And then you also have these other forces from, let's say, a European point of view that are trying to change the schools to their liking. That also is in there. You're not getting the quality of education you want. That's it for now. Please like and subscribe and post questions or topics that you'd like to hear about.